MCN. I'm doing my second video here for if statements and switch statements here eventually. First thing I wanted to talk about was the input-output stream. Let's just do input and output through C++. Another thing I want to talk about is the data type string. It does need to be included in order to be used, since it is not already or automatically included as a data type in C++. Okay, so you gotta include this too if you want to use strings. Then we have what's called namespaces. This helps us do input and output through the user. You can either print a message out to the user, or we can receive input from the user. Okay, then moving on. The next thing is getting started with main. Okay, every program needs a main function. Okay, we'll get a little bit more into functions and stuff like that later. This one actually has a data type of integer, which means it returns an integer data type. It has no parameters. Okay, but so moving on, you don't really need to know that just yet. You just need to know how just to type this part in, and you need a starting bracket, which tells it where to start, and then an ending bracket, which is down here. Okay, everything in between is what's going to happen when the program starts. Okay, so our first data type that I chose is a Boolean data type, which I spoke about before in my last video. It's either on or off. So I'm using the variable named lightSwitch as an example. Okay, and then next data type is an integer. Of course, we talked about how that an integer is a whole number. So I'm also initializing it, like we spoke before, to the value 0. So it already has a value. I like to point out that some languages like C# as I'm learning, all variables need to be initialized, so it won't be a bad habit to get started doing that now. You know what I mean? Always trying to initialize. I mean, there's no reason not to initialize. I mean, sometimes there is, but for the most part, you want to try to initialize when you can to ensure that there's no data leakage or anything like that, or sometimes it just throws errors. Okay, the next data type is a string data type, which, like I said before, is not automatically included in C++. You have to include it, and actually points to its own library for what to do with a string data type. Now, the char, like I said before, was used for letters too, but it could all be converted to a number, so everything basically is converted to a number within C++. If it's not, then of course you're going to probably have like string. You're going to have to find a header for it. Okay, moving on. Okay, now we're getting started with these if statements. I think most people have seen this if you've messed around with script and stuff for Mir. It's pretty much the same thing. You have your if, and then your condition, and you're checking if lightSwitch is equal to, we're using an operator here, equal to 0. And if it is, it's going to do this. So basically we're checking to see if the light is on, or off. If it's off, we're going to print the message the light is off. Okay, if it's not, on the other side of the condition, we're going to say it's on. So if it's 1, we're going to say the light is on. As you notice here, single statements where you're only doing one thing, like I'm only outputting a message here with a C out. I didn't even talk about that yet. C out, you're going to use these. Basically, you want to look at like the mouth is pointing to the direction of the data. So here we're using the keyword C out, and if it's pointing away from the keyword, then it's going out. If it's pointing toward it, then it's going in, which actually, if it was an input, it would say C in, But then these will be pointing this direction. Sorry, this direction, and then the variable or whatever information you're trying to put in would be here. Okay, we'll get more into that later. So for now, we're just using output. So we want to go out. All right. Now the difference, what I was saying about single statements. If you have more than one statement in a line in your body of your if statement, there needs to be brackets, a starting bracket and an ending bracket. So you see here, this is a command to increment a variable of an integer data type. They actually have what's called prefix and post, and basically that would be like putting this over here. This would be a prefix, which means it would increment before it reads this variable, and then of course the number would be 1 greater before it outputs the data. On the other hand, if you have the number before it, it would read the number first and give you the value of that, and then increment it. So then after that, it would probably, its value would change to the next number. Okay, down here we're using the cout again, just outputting more data. And then we have an else statement. Else is pretty much the same as before, except for now we're using 2 statements. Like I said before, of course you want to do the same thing. You want to use 2 brackets. You want a starting bracket and an ending bracket. That's pretty much if statements in a nutshell. I mean, they're not really hard. They're pretty much the same for every type of, even scripting, as I said before. It's pretty much the same. Now a switch statement would be a little different. I don't think you've ever seen that in Mir. I don't think we've used them. Switch statement, you just pretty much start out and you use a variable. You check a value, and then you run cases like a scenario. You pretty much decide what the data might be before you use, beforehand. You pretty much decide what the data might be beforehand. That's basically the best way to put it. Is you start out with the keyword switch, and then in parentheses you would put the variable that you're going to use. So if I used light switch, we would automatically have a control of knowing that there's only 2 values. It's either on or off. So we could use case 1 or 0. We should start with 0, and then you want to use the colon, and that tells it where to stop or start using the case. And what you want to get in the habit of doing here when you use these switch statements is to put a break in right away before you even like when you're writing the skeleton of the switch statement. You already know you need 2 statements, case 1 and case 0. Another good thing to see too with the way C++ works is when you put this colon in there, it actually jumps it back and puts it in line, lets you know that it's picked it up. That's what, it's picked it up as another case. Okay, and put the break statements in, so that basically tells it where to start and stop. I did forget something here. You gotta actually tell the statement when to start and stop too with using these brackets. Okay, and every switch statement has what's called a default too. So like, if a value is not correct, like say they're not entering the right type of data type, say you're asking a question that expects a string data type return. Like say if I asked the question like how many cats do you have, that of course that would be like an integer data type return. If I asked you what your name is, of course that would be some kind of string and not a number. So I'm getting, and you